Labour union NUMSA has been introspecting on the weight that collective bargaining strategies hold in economic times, with many industries facing the blunt of a slow growth environment. They're hosting their 2025 National Bargaining Conference, and business reporter Ntokozo Khumalo is there following the engagement and joining us now from the Sandton Hotel where the event is happening. And Ntokozo, you told us earlier that there's a lot of groundwork covered in the sessions so far, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of solutioning they're creating on the economy, government and the private sector. They've all got to work together, and they are adequately, I think, represented to explain the views from across the country through the presence of their shop stewards countrywide.
Absolutely, Iman. The union here over the next 3 days, over the past 3 days, tomorrow the last day, but it is a closed session and engaging, of course, with those critical industries that do create employment in the economy. Later on this morning, we'll have statistics in South Africa releasing the quarterly employment statistics that will give us the full year picture of employment created in the economy over the year. But if we look back to the last print, which is the September print, it painted a grim picture. 294,000 jobs lost, so a 2.7% decline in employment when we look at September 2023 to September 2024, with the very industries that the union is engaging with being the ones shedding the jobs. That's including mining, manufacturing, transport. But what is interesting, Iman, those very industries also the ones that drove a 0.8% increase in real wages and salaries for those who did keep their jobs over the period. So the December print to just give us then that full year picture of what's really happening in the economy and whether industries are able to create jobs. And I suppose that's why these discussions are important at this time. And I'm joined with by NUMSA's spokesperson, Paramile Majola, for a little bit more. Paramile, thank you for talking to us. Now, as I just mentioned to Iman, we are going to get those employment data out. There's a slew of data that we've gotten that gives a picture really of the state of the economy and the rising cost of living. The importance then today of all these stakeholders coming up with solutions, especially around that collective bargaining, to ensure that the working class is protected through these tough times.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having me on your show. Yes, indeed. The National Bargaining Conference that NUMSA is holding today is really a window. We're giving a window into our bargaining process. Too often, whenever we are having wage talks, when there's wage negotiations, there's always this narrative that emerges in the media around our demands to say, these unions, they're being unreasonable, they're being unrealistic. But what we're basically showing you and demonstrating with the bargaining conference is that we are an organization that actually researches our position. We have researchers who help us to look at what is the situation affecting the majority of people, that's the working class, what are their conditions, what are their living conditions, not just their working conditions. Our goal in every negotiation is to always achieve an outcome that improves the living conditions of workers. So yesterday, for example, we had Duma Qubule, who was one of the economists, talking to us here. We invited members of the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, the ones that released that annual report on the food basket. And of course, we also involve stakeholders, stakeholders like NARCM, CEO was here, the executive of the tire sector, Employers Association was here. And of course, we also had Minister Paksta of DTIC and also Minister Barbara Creasy of Transport. So you must understand that when we articulate our demands, we're articulating from a position, an informed position. We would have engaged all stakeholders, and that is what we are presenting, and it's based on that.
And just finding a solution together. Phakamile. I think it's really been testing times for a lot of South Africans with the developments over the past few months, the new threats now to the economy as well on a geopolitical front. Are we moving the needle in terms of the private sector, labor, government, really meeting each other in how do we drive economic growth while also protecting our workers and ensuring that there is that social upward mobility for them as well? I know tomorrow there will be closed sessions, but we will have Minister Gwede Mantashe as well today. So digging into those really critical industries, just pushing the needle forward together as stakeholders of the economy.
You know, I really find that the way you've articulated it to be quite interesting, because at the end of the day, we do have to find each other. There has to be a compromise. We have to be able to find a middle ground where we are going to be able to meet each other, and because that's what bargaining is, it's give and take. And that's what this process is about, trying to establish what would our position be, but also what is our fallback position and what is the sort of the compromise line, if there's such a thing. We always try and have that process with every major negotiation. I think also when we speak more broadly, when you talk about the involvement of stakeholders in the economy and growth, etc., there's two things that I think we have to always be conscious of. First of all, we can always negotiate. Negotiation, we're a country that came out of a very difficult time through dialogue. Yes, we will be the first to say that the 1994 the breakthrough didn't go far enough in transforming the lives of the majority of people, because as we now know, we live in a society of high unemployment, high inequality and poverty. So all of us who are involved in business, whether you're labor, whether you're a business, whether you're a worker, we have a vested interest in trying to build this economy. But it will only work if we all agree that we have the same vision in mind. Now, we think, and maybe you can say that is where the conflict comes in, but in many, many respects, the sense we get sometimes from business is that they're just interested in the profit side of things. They're not interested in something broader than that. And at the end of the day, we can't operate with outside of the context that is dominating in South Africa at the moment, the geopolitical situation as you talk about. All of these things have an impact on bargaining, they have an impact on these types of negotiations, and it puts pressure. So we're hoping that we will be able to navigate this period. We're a union that supports government's position, particularly on Palestine, etc. But we're also not ignorant of the fact that there are problems in relation to our relationship with the US, and that has to be resolved.
Phakamile, thank you so much for talking to us. Of course, Iman Phakamile Majola is the spokesperson for NUMSA. Of course, that tough balancing act, the word of the year, just for all the stakeholders, labor, private sector and government, to find each other and work through the economic challenges so that, the working class can be protected from the rising cost of living. But the conference, as you hear behind me here, is about to kick off, Iman, so we'll be updating a little bit later on today.
And of course, well, thanks for that balancing act. Indeed, the term of the year. We're going to show